Have you ever wondered what happens when a tech-savvy entrepreneur takes on an entire legal system and wins? I'm Christina Perez-Hassano, host of Verdicts Vogue, and today I'm sharing an extraordinary episode originally from the Legal Beagle podcast, created by my friend and fellow attorney, Jonathan Negretti. This conversation was just too compelling not to bring to this platform. You'll meet Erling Andersen, a Norwegian entrepreneur who sold his startup for millions, then went to law school just to fight his own government over taxes, and he won. But what makes Erling's story truly fascinating is what he did next. He created a revolutionary legal tech platform designed to bring transparency and efficiency to the legal profession. This episode explores what happens when you mix Silicon Valley mindset with the traditions of law, and where Erling sees our industry heading. Let's dive in.
Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to this week's episode of the Legal Beagle podcast. We have gone international. This week, I am joined by a guest all the way from Oslo, Norway. His name is Erling Andersen, and he is the founder and creator of Advokatguiden. Did I say that right, Erling?
Perfect.
I got a thumbs up. It's more easy to pronounce The Lawyer Guide, which is actually what that stands for. This is a legal platform that Erling and his team have rolled out across Norway, and they're ready to roll this out now across Europe, and hopefully one day we'll see it here in the United States. Erling, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
So my understanding is that you are a serial entrepreneur. You had a social media network that you had built and then sold in Norway. You have I think it's a digital, what is it called? Consultancy called Omega Media that you have there. And you, at some point in your life, decided to also go to law school. How did you make all that work?
Well, that's a good question. You know, I started a social media company, kind of like Facebook here in Norway, called beep.no. And that turned out to be a huge success. We gathered approximately 10% of the Norwegian population. And this was way back in 2006, 2007. So we were quite early. We were kind of competing with Facebook going global, but unfortunately Zuckerberg beat us. But then we sold it for $12 million in 2008. I was 25 years old, got a lot of money. I think the English football player, George Best, said it best. He said that I used half of the money on hookers and drugs, and then the rest I just squandered.
Why didn't you at that point just call it a day? That would be everyone's dream, to be able to retire at age 25. What prompted you to jump back in and develop another company after selling off your social network?
Well, I kind of discovered that I was miserable with just money and nothing to dream about, really. You know, when you're an entrepreneur, especially in the IT field, I think the journey is more valuable than the destination in a way. So starting something, working on it, doing your passion every day, that's what counts. So after a few years, I decided to go back into the IT startup world, and then I started my own company. And the reason why I became a lawyer and later an attorney is because 4 years after we sold the company, the Norwegian Tax Authority came after me, and they wanted more tax, basically. So in Norway, we have a tax system which works pretty simple. If you get a salary, you're taxed approximately 50% of your salary, quite a high bracket. And then if you sell stocks, you're taxed at 28%. So the point with our deal, the beep.no deal, was that a lot of the payout was contingent on us keeping or continuing to work. It's called an earn-out agreement. Lots of lawyers will know this term. It basically means that you keep working for some period, like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and then you get paid kind of a premium, or at least some of the money that you receive is not paid out in full unless you keep working. It's kind of a whip to keep the entrepreneurs working, right? So the Norwegian government saw that as me trying to evade tax law because I taxed 28% because I was selling a company. And they said, hold on a minute, you have to keep working for at least 2 years. So that means that all of the proceeds from the sale should be taxed as salary. So they slapped me with a tax bill of approximately $500,000 extra on the sale. And I just felt that was completely unreasonable. So I hired an attorney here in Norway, one of the best. I had lots of money, so I could afford to hire the best. And he wrote one letter, and he charged $15,000 for this one letter. It was like 4 pages long. And I told the guys I work with, like, this is probably going to take years to settle with the Norwegian government. We can't afford to go forward with this super expensive lawyer. I think I'll do some courses on the university, and I'll take over the letter writing and see where this goes. And then I completed law school here in Norway in half the time. It's usually 5 years. I took it in 2.5 years. And then ultimately I won the case against the Norwegian Tax Authority. So I didn't have to pay anything.
So, but you spent 2.5 years in school so that you could argue your own case and prevail. That's fantastic. What a story. Well, I think most people probably fell out of their chairs when you said the tax rate on income taxes is 50% of your salary in Norway.
Yeah.
Wow. That is startling to hear, because in the US, people argue that 20 to 25% is absurd. So to hear it's more than double that is a crazy number to just comprehend. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's quite high also, but Norway is a social democratic monarchy, and there are some nice trade-offs for the high tax bracket. Free university, free healthcare, everything is free basically, which you get from the government. But of course, you do pay for it indirectly.
So you go to law school, and the intent behind going to law school was so that you could save legal costs on fighting the Norwegian government for this tax penalty. You get out of law school. Was there an intent to go practice law, or was it simply to just defend yourself against this tax case that the Norwegian government brought against you?
No, it's just self-defense, 100% self-defense. I didn't have any plan going forward to actually work as a lawyer. But when I gotten the degree, I was like, well, I should do something about this. And I came from IT, so I specialized in kind of IT law and actually tax law, because obviously I came to learn quite a bit about it. So I was kind of a tax/IT lawyer, which is a good thing to be as a lawyer, because it's a high income bracket. You earn quite a bit if you manage to be successful in that area. So I worked as that for, I think, 3 years. And then I kind of said to myself, well, it's been a good run. I feel it was immensely satisfying to work as a lawyer and attorney, but ultimately I just wanted to go back to IT and startups and do stuff like that again.
So why the lawyer guide? What did you identify in the marketplace that was missing? Why did you bring this concept to reality?
Well, the thing I realized, I came with IT background into the legal field, and I talked with so many colleagues. I was asking them, like, how do you do client recruitment? And they were all telling me, well, we do this the normal way, the way you're supposed to do it, by going to conventions, doing talks, writing articles, doing word of mouth. And I'm like, wow, that's insanely antiquated way of getting new business. I mean, it's like they were more preoccupied having the right business card than doing anything online. And I tried to get people to like go online and just have a presence there. And so many lawyers, especially the old ones, were telling me, Erling, just relax. Nobody's using the internet to find a lawyer. And I'm like, oh my God, is this really happening? And people were so adamant that the internet did not work for client recruitment. So I kind of stumbled upon the fact that a lot of the legal industry is extremely antiquated in the way it deals with clients and in the way it deals with client recruitment, but also down to the basic stuff. I don't know how it is in the States, but here in Norway, the case handling systems are extremely old. The way you do hourly billing is outdated. typically you come from a profession like, if you have CRM systems like Salesforce, really good systems, really powerful systems, but for some reason, those systems haven't really reached a lot of the legal profession yet. So I just saw a huge gaping market opportunity. And also another thing I discovered going to the kind of the legal profession with the IT background, I kind of saw that a lot of the really successful lawyers were the ones who had been in the business for so long, because you have to build up a portfolio, right? So that kind of shuts out a lot of the younger people. I didn't have any problems myself because I have a huge network and I came from like an earlier profession. But I felt sorry for the younger lawyers because they had to go the ranks. You know, you had to kind of work as first a junior lawyer and then an associate, and or associate first and then junior lawyer, and then work as a lawyer. And you had to really build yourself up. It will take like anywhere from 5 to 10 years before you start making any real money. And you're really living off the scraps of the older lawyers who like throw you a bone every once in a while. You know, here's a case, you can do this. I'm too busy to handle this case. So I realized that there was also a giant opportunity to create a more democratic and even playing field across the lawyers. And then the last thing I realized, well, two more things actually, if I can add. One is the fact that there is very, very little transparency in the legal profession. You know, when you're in the legal profession, you kind of feel that you understand everything and you know all the big firms. You know, like this is the big firm and this is a small firm and this is a medium firm. But when you're on the outside, you have absolutely no idea what a good law firm is supposed to be, who's big, who's not, who's medium, who I should contact. So, you know, coming from this outside, I just saw, wow, there's this small little world where a lot of lawyers think that they know everything, and kind of they have positioned themselves in this internal hierarchy that nobody on the outside has any inkling even exists. You know, before I became a lawyer, I thought that all lawyers were the same. Like I could basically call this guy or this guy, and I would be as well off. It didn't matter. But of course, that's not the case. So it's really the transparency issue, and then of course the last fact, which was really fundamental to understand, is the fact that you, at least in Norway, and I do think in a lot of the world, you don't have any way of knowing how good a lawyer is until you hire him. And that's kind of what I discovered. Is I hired this super expensive lawyer to deal with my case, and he did a perfectly fine job. He was not the best lawyer I could get probably, but certainly not the worst. But you know, I had absolutely no way of finding out that on beforehand unless I used some kind of network or kind of called around or something, you know.
Well, you mentioned two things, Erling, that I want to expand upon. One is the antiquated nature of this profession. I wholly agree with you. When I came out of law school, I had a business background. I wasn't a serial entrepreneur like yourself. I worked more in corporate America, but in bigger companies. But when I did so, I thought some of those general business practices would transfer into this profession. And I was startled to find out how they don't, and how really much in the dark ages this profession is still today, even here in the States. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's still so antiquated?
That's a really interesting question. Well, I do think the legal profession is going to go the same way as pilots and cab drivers and everybody else. You know, my grandfather was a cab driver, and my mother used to tell me how much of a status position that was to have. He had like 2 cabs, and everybody in my small hometown knew him. And that was a really highly regarded profession, because it meant you had a car, you were your own contractor, you could decide your own hours, you were earning quite a lot of money. It was like a kind of a big deal being a cab driver. But what happened was that there was an influx of people who wanted to work as that, of course, and the rates dropped, and now probably only a few people are earning money in that profession. And then that same thing happened with pilots. You know, pilots used to be a highly recognized profession, and to a certain degree it still is. But the fact that is that it's been industrialized. It's been there's huge competition between pilots, especially here in the EU, at least Europe. Like pilots from Baltic states and stuff like that, taking lower wages and driving the reputation maybe of the business a little bit down. And I think the legal profession has been kind of an isolated, protected little nest, of people with long education. It's impossible to get into the profession unless you follow the ordinary route. And there hasn't been any kind of viable competition. And the people who run the industry, they haven't had any reason to introduce more competitiveness into the marketplace. Everybody's been earning a lot of money, just keeping it the way it is, So I think that's the biggest reason. Like, nobody has had the reason to kind of revolutionize the legal industry yet.
That's an interesting point, because here in Arizona, where I'm from, this just changed. This is the first state, I think, in the entire country that is now allowing private money to participate in owning law firms. And that's a big, big issue here, because for the longest time, to your point, it was you could only own a law firm if you had a law degree. So there was a hurdle you had to get over in order to even own a law firm. And then there was this circle, this club, if you will, of people that were like, look, we all make a lot of money. Let's not rock the boat. Well, the rules changed here just recently. And in Arizona, for the first time, they're allowing now private investors, private equity, just entrepreneurs like yourself to come in and say, look, I want to be a part of that. I think I can do it better. I believe some of the changes that we're going to see are similar to what you're envisioning, even in Norway. I think you're going to see that here in the States. I think what you're going to see is this almost like a gig economy type approach where people they need lawyers. It's a service, right? It's no different than a car service. Like you're talking about your dad with the cab. It's no different than Uber. It's a service. And I think you're going to see that change. And I think people are not prepared for this evolution that is about to come. I don't think people even see it. I talk to other lawyer friends and they think I'm crazy because I look at things a little bit differently, but they certainly don't think that that's ever going to happen in their lifetime. And I think it's going to happen sooner than later. But my second question for you, Erling, about something you were talking about earlier, you mentioned the word transparency. I suspect I know how you're going to respond, but I'm going to ask anyway. Why do you think there is a lack of transparency with this profession? Because I have my own thoughts, but I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah. Before I answer that question, I just want to say something which you will find amusing, is that Norway is actually introducing the same legislation as you have now next year. So up till now, it's only been legal for attorneys and lawyers to own legal practices in Norway. But now they're actually going to allow it from next year. I think it's next year or the year after that. But anyway, very shortly, anybody can go into the industry. And the Bar Association has been fighting this, like crazy, because obviously they see what's going to happen. Like, private entrepreneurs are going to go in there and they're going to revolutionize the industry. They're going to hire lawyers, paying them probably lower salaries, unfortunately for us as lawyers, but that's just the way it's going to be, They're going to hire them to lower salaries, and they're going to streamline the products that are offered in a far better way than what's been done today. And I'll give you a small example. I'm sure you have the same in the US. Before I became a lawyer, I thought that every time you went to a lawyer and you got him to help you with a contract, he basically started from zero, or at least, from quite low. But then I realized this is a template industry. Sorry